Welcome to The Block. He's Coach Carl Reed, he's Blake Brockermeyer, and I am Emily Proud. And guys, in case it wasn't clear, college football always delivers. And once again, week 3 offered up more storylines than frankly we know what to do with. So let's start big picture with the always spinning coaching carousel. A second Power 5 coach let go in September. Arizona State parting ways with Herm Edwards yesterday. The official language says he decided to, quote, relinquish his role as head coach. Now this after a 26-20 record and 1 bowl appearance in 5 years. The final nail came Saturday with a loss to Eastern Michigan. His role relinquishment also comes amid an NCAA investigation, an uncertain future for athletic director Ray Anderson, and a Pac-12 in limbo. So Carl, why do you think the Herm Edwards era ultimately failed?
The big thing is the NCAA violations. Once that happened, it kind of shined a dark light over the program that they haven't been able to get under. A mass exodus of players in the portal led by Jaden Daniels leaving and going to LSU. And so it just seemed like the wind had kind of fell from up under the sails and that it had been heading this direction for quite a long time.
Blake, where did this go wrong?
Well, I think, kind of like what Carl said, they had a mass exodus of guys in the portal. And I think, the athletic director, I think when he was hired, that they said basically that they wanted to win. They wanted to win within the rules and they wanted to graduate. And so 2 of those 3 things they failed on. Their graduation of athletes has been on the rise at Arizona State, but they're under NCAA investigation. They haven't won very much. It's 26-20 overall, and 17 and 14 overall in the Pac-12. So I think it's just been something that before the season, I think you could predict that this would have happened. They should have done this 10 months ago, and it's just been a disaster waiting to happen, if you ask me.
And Blake, one of the things we keep talking about, and this is going to come up again and again with these coaching hires, is you bottom line, you have to win. And winning solves the majority of the problems you have. So if you don't win and you have an NCAA investigation, it's going to typically lead to this.
Yeah, and I think, Herm Edwards is going to go back and replay a lot of this in his mind. But some of the big issues that he had there is he trusted some of his coaches too much. And as a head coach, you have to trust your coaching staff. But some of the coaches that he had really let him down, bringing guys in dead periods with COVID and stuff like that. So you got to trust your coaches, and your coaches have to be able to follow the rules. And if you don't, there's going to be consequences. And he paid the ultimate sacrifice in getting fired.
Blake, how much does the athletic director in situations like these have to be held accountable also?
Oh, if you ask me, he should have been fired yesterday just as well. I think everyone could have predicted. There was a story, and I believe the New York Times or something like that this summer that said Arizona State was the biggest dumpster fire in the country. So I think everyone predicted that this was going to happen. It should have happened 10 months ago. They could have gone out, hired a coach that had a little bit of a future and a plan. And now they're going to be behind the 8 ball, and the season's going to probably go nowhere but downhill from here for them.
Yeah, well, when Herm Edwards was originally hired back in 2017, it was his first college job since 1989. So definitely an out-of-the-box move. But Blake, what kind of coach should Arizona State target for the future of its program? Where do they go from here?
If it were me hiring, I would take a really strong look at Kenny Dillingham at Oregon. I think he's a guy that's got some youth. He's got some juice. He's an innovative mind. He's already in the Pac-12. He's from Arizona. I think that would be a great hire, knowing that this is going to take a couple of years or maybe even longer to kind of get the program back. You've got to find a coach that understands the NIL, understands today's recruiting landscape. And I think he would be a great hire. If I were Arizona State, that'd be the first name that I would go to.
If I was a guy looking at my first head coaching job, I'd stay away from this job. You're going to have a major NCAA sanction come down on you. It's going to probably be scholarship reductions. And in history, the guys who take on that typically end up getting fired themselves. I would let somebody else come in and go through the probation and clean a little of this mess up. And then I'd try to be the guy after that guy. If I was a guy looking at my first head coaching job, looking at an opportunity, I don't know that I would touch it with the NCAA sanctions coming.
Blake, what do you think about that? How attractive is this job to potential, the next head coach?
I think any Power 5 job is attractive. It really just depends on the situation. I mean, Carl's right. This is going to be years down the road until Arizona State's going to probably be able to start with a clean slate again and really get this thing going. So you got to find someone that's young, like I said, that understands the dynamics of college football these days and the portal and recruiting. I think Dillingham would be a great hire if you ask me, but it really is going to depend on his options. I mean, I think he's going to have some options outside of Arizona State after the season, and so that will play a factor as well.
Carl, I've got to ask you this. You threw this out to Blake. Does Ray Anderson make this hire?
No, he can't. After something goes this bad under your watch, it's going to get moved to somebody else's plate. It's an unfortunate thing, but with the money these coaches are making and the money that's having to be paid out when it's not successful, you're going to see more and more athletic directors when it comes to these head football coaching and head men's basketball coaching hires be held accountable in the same light if it doesn't work out.
All right, so we got the first two coaching dominoes falling with Scott Frost at Nebraska and, of course, Herm Edwards. So the question is, who's next? Carl, whose seat has become awfully toasty through 3 weeks of this season?
Well, the first guy that you have to look at is Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech. It's been extremely rough on him there. Haven't had much success, another blowout loss, and it looks like the wagons are circling and that he's not going to make it much longer. There were rumors circulating that he could have been let go as early as today. It looked like he's definitely going to survive one more week there, but all offseason we knew that his seat was extremely hot. Then you look at Brian Harsin at Auburn, a humiliating loss to Penn State, totally dominated in every facet of the game, and it just hasn't been a good fit. Both of those guys are in extreme amount of trouble. It looks like that both of them, it's a foregone conclusion what's going to happen here any day now. It's unfortunate for both coaches, but these programs want more success. Georgia Tech wants to have a pulse again. Auburn wants to compete for national championships. That's not happening at either place right now. Both of these coaches' seats are extremely hot.
Yeah, what's wild to me, Carl, is both of these coaches, we would have predicted, and we did predict that before the season even started, they would get fired. So it's just dead man walking for a lot of coaches. There's more than that that are going to get fired after this season, but those two are definitely high-profile programs that will be attractive to a lot of coaches in college football.
Absolutely.
Those are two programs, too, similar in that they stand in the shadow of much larger programs. Georgia Tech has Georgia right there. They're an absolute powerhouse. And then, of course, Auburn's always going to be judged based on how you compete against Alabama. So two very similar programs. All right, guys, I need some positivity. We've got so much negativity to start this show. It is a part of the sport, but Blake, just like you can coach your way onto the hot seat, you can also coach yourself off of it, and a few have done just that. So who's off the hot seat this week?
Well, the two guys that stand out to me so far this season are Mike Norvell. I mean, what an incredible job that he's done at Florida State this year, beating LSU at essentially a home game in week one, and then last week going up to Louisville and playing a great game on the road with a ton of major injuries on their team. And finding a way to win that game. So hats off to him. Florida State is a very talented team that I did not expect to be as good as they are. Hopefully these injuries are minor for them, but they got some tough games on the schedule ahead, and he's done a fantastic job. Always thought coaching at SMU that he was the best coach that we coached against offensively at Memphis. He did an incredible job there, and I think Florida State looks like they're in the right hands with Mike Norvell. Secondly, I've got Dino Babers at Syracuse. I mean, they're 3-0. What a great job he's done. He's won everywhere he's been. Syracuse is a tough job, and he's got them headed in the right direction. They've upgraded through the portal, and they've got some key positions that they've stayed healthy this year, which in the past has really hurt them. So those two guys to me are really done a great job. There's more than that, but I've been impressed with both of those guys, and they both got some really tough games coming up.
And Blake, that's the other side of this thing that people don't look at. Both of those guys started the season on the hot seat as well, but so far they've been able to navigate through it and get their teams off to great starts. And so the key for them is going to be, can they continue playing well and take this thing all the way to the finish line, because we know how fickle college football can be.
Yeah, I think for Florida State, it's going to come down to some key injuries. I mean, can they stay healthy? Because if they're at full speed, they have enough talent to compete in the ACC. I think Syracuse will likely drop some games as the season goes on. But looking at Syracuse, you have to think, what is the high point for Syracuse? What can they really consistently achieve there to where you're happy? And I think Dino Babers is going to get them to where that the highest point that they can get to, which is probably 6, 7, maybe 8 wins every now and then. So I think if I'm a Syracuse fan, I'd be really happy with the progress that he's made there.
Well, certainly, we got to give a shout out too to some of these typical basketball schools like Syracuse, UNC, Duke, Kansas. All of those teams are 3-0. We've got, I think, a Kansas-Duke matchup this weekend, so that should be certainly exciting. It's a full year of excitement for these teams, not just basketball season. They've got some good football programs as well. Well, guys, it's Monday, which means it's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Carl, your good is a little off the radar, so let's start with you.
Every year when we come into the hiring carousel, there's always a concern for enough minority coaches not getting opportunities to take over some of these programs. And when I talk to agents and athletic administrators and search firms across the country, one of the key things is they may not know who some of these guys are, and some of these guys fly under the radar. 3 guys I want to highlight this week going into this season is co-defensive coordinator at Washington, William Inge. You saw the way that they just took apart Michigan State completely. Kenny Burns, assistant head coach, running backs coach at the University of Minnesota, and Ryan Walters, the defensive coordinator at Illinois. And it's interesting because Ryan Walters was a former star defensive back at Colorado, as you see some of those jobs like Arizona State start to open up on the West Coast in the Pac-12. He could be a good fit. These are all 3 guys that have been around winners, have been around winning. Ryan Walters has learned a lot in his stint right now from Brett Bielema. Kenny Burns has been under PJ Fleck. We've seen what PJ has been able to do with Kenny's help at the University of Minnesota, and the job that those guys are doing in Washington. William Edge, man in the defense. Kalen DeBoer has completely turned that program around in a short amount of time. Those are 3 guys who deserve an opportunity when some of these jobs come open on the carousel. They're doing an excellent job.
Well, certainly, and Blake, your good is Florida State linebacker Kalen DeLoach, but how good is he?
He's really good. His stats aren't going to blow you away. He is asked to do some really incredible things, but his speed really stands out. He's an incredible athlete that's been asked to spy on Jaden Daniels and Malik Cunningham the last 3 weeks. He can run toe for toe, step for step with all these guys in space. A lot of times you'll see him on film. These guys have a 5, 6, 7 yard head start on him, and he chases these guys down and gets them down. He can come off the edge. He can play inside in traffic. He's just a great football player that can play every down. And he's a guy that you want to keep your eye on, because this guy is a future Sunday superstar.
He's as good as a linebacker, Blake, as we've seen around here in a long time.
Whew, all right.
It's just very rare. It's just very rare that you can ask a middle linebacker to cover running backs and tight ends. I mean, with the ease that he does it, I mean, Deloach could honestly cover a lot of wide receivers and do as good a job as a lot of safeties do. So I'm really impressed with his game, and I think he's going to continue to get better with the reps, the more reps that he gets, and he's on a good defense as well.
Certainly, we see NFL teams moving to that style of linebacker as well, the ability to drop into coverage. All right, as for your bad, back to negative, you guys. Fresno State star quarterback Jake Haener was carted off during the third quarter in a loss to USC. It looks to be a right leg injury, but they don't fear that it's season ending. That is good. We know this is a major loss for the Bulldogs, of course, but Blake, how big a loss is this for college football as a whole?
Well, it's a big loss because he's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. You know, he was averaging over 350 yards a game with an over 70% completion rate. He is the main engine to Fresno State's team, and just kind of an underrated quarterback that I think the NFL teams obviously know about him, but he would have had a chance this weekend to really make his mark against USC, and unfortunately it looks like he went down with an ankle injury. They've got a bye week this week, which is great. They play UConn the next week, so I think hopefully it's something minor. It looks like possibly an ankle injury. He can get back this season and get Fresno State in contention in the Mountain West.
Now, Carl, we thought after combining for 100 points in their first two games under Mario Cristobal that the Miami Hurricanes were back. But they failed to find the end zone at all at Texas A&M. So where are they in your mind?
Well, they're not back yet. The Miami Hurricanes fans were killing Blake and I over the weekend when we said that slow down a minute. Texas A&M is a very, very tough place to play. When they fumbled that punt and muffed that punt at the beginning of the game, Texas A&M took the momentum and Miami was not able to get it back. Miami Hurricanes are going to be really good under Coach Cristobal's tenure, but they're not there yet. The U is not back yet. You have to slow down a little bit. There's still a lot of pieces they need to build. They need to be better at wide receiver. They need to get more explosive guys on the perimeter. No offensive touchdowns, struggled in the red zone. The University of Miami is going to get it done, but they're not there yet.
Patience. I like it. That could be maybe their toughest test of the season, too, and it came pretty early under Cristobal's tenure, so we'll certainly wait and see on the Hurricanes. Your ugly doesn't have to do, though, with on-the-field production, Carl. Outside of having an offensive identity crisis, to put it lightly, at A&M, what else has gone wrong for the Aggies?
Well, you have 4 starters suspended, including top recruit Evan Stewart, for a curfew violation that kept him out of the Miami game. Chris Marshall, Smoke Bowie, Denver Harris added to that list. Guys need to really understand when they get on the college campus, they have to follow the rules. It's not an environment like high school where you're going to get to play through some things no matter what. You have just as big of a responsibility in your off-the-field conduct as you do on your field play. Now, there's some coaches that I know that might not have benched those guys in that situation, but Jimbo set a standard. We saw something similar with Kirby Smart benching tight end Eric Gilbert, a guy that has first-round talent, and not allowing him to suit up for the South Carolina game. These young men are getting a lot of money. They're getting a lot of notoriety. It's time for you to check yourself a little bit and follow the rules. Things have changed on college campuses, Emily and Blake. I can remember as a high school coach, I used to go visit my guys. They didn't have food. They didn't have the things they needed. I was always going to Walmart to get things for my guys, making sure they were taken care of. Now when I go visit my guys, they ask me, Coach, are you good? Do you need anything? They have plenty of money. They got a big bankroll. They drive in fancy cars. And it makes them take a little bit of a different mentality going into the situation. Guys, you need to follow the rules that your coach has set for you and focus on playing football. Number one, you're hurting your team. Number two, you're hurting yourself, because those NFL scouts and GMs are going to ask you about these incidents in those interviews when the draft comes, which is ultimately your goal. Check yourself, follow the rules, and make sure you're in alignment with them.
Yeah, and I'm glad Jimbo Fisher, suspended those kids. I mean, what a missed opportunity for them to go out on a national stage against a great team in Miami and make a name for themselves. And to do that when the stakes for Jimbo Fisher were pretty high. I mean, everyone's been down on A&M, including us. So hats off for him for installing his culture and his rules. And those guys are going to have to wake up, because if you're not going to follow the rules and you don't have the discipline to not stay in your hotel the night before a game, then it's going to be a long college career for you.
Blake, I want to ask you this, because obviously the rules are the rules. They know they broke them. Head coach knows they broke them. But how important is it for Jimbo Fisher to set that standard? You are in a locker room. You know what it's like. How big is it for him to say, it doesn't matter if you're a star player. It doesn't matter if we have this massive game on Saturday where we need everyone. The rules are the rules, and everyone's going to be held accountable.
Oh yeah, you have to enforce the rules. I mean, a lot of coaches have a very small amount of rules, but obviously going out the night before is not a great precedent to set for players that are going to play the next night. I mean, it's something that's important. The leadership at the players that are in leadership positions at Texas A&M, I'm sure, have taken control of this situation as well. But I would expect some severe consequences for those kids. They're young, they need to learn, but there's not one kid on a college campus that thinks going out the night before a game is something that's going to be accepted by anybody.
Unless maybe you're a student in the stands watching the game. That's the only way that it's all right. So ugly on the players, good on Jimbo Fisher. Guys, I will say this real quick. Coach that I used to cover, Mike Vrabel, head coach at the Titans, always said, don't do dumb stuff, he used another S word, to hurt the team. And that was something that was super important to him, whether it was Derrick Henry or a third string running back. Everybody was held accountable, and that really set the standard. Well, guys, we know Nebraska is, to put it simply, in limbo right now with an interim head coach. So expectations have definitely taken a nosedive from where they were to start the year. But Blake, why have things gone wrong or gone from bad to ugly in Lincoln?
Well, mostly the defensive side of the ball has been horrifically bad. Eric Shenander was fired yesterday at Nebraska. Nebraska's total defense is ranked 128th in the country out of 131 teams. Anyone that's watched Nebraska this season has seen every offense they've played against just run and throw the ball at will against them. So I think he's a good defensive coordinator. They were 47th and 50th the last 2 years in the country. They lost a lot of experience, leadership on their defense. But I mean, obviously 128th for a school that has such a great tradition of defense like Nebraska is unacceptable, and any defensive coordinator is going to get fired in that situation. So that is the main reason for Nebraska's failure this year, if you've watched Nebraska, which I think everybody has at this point.
Carl, it looked like you had something to say. I know we've talked a lot about Nebraska and the failings there, but what do you take from Blake's words?
Blake hit it on the nail when he talked about the defense. It's been a major dark spot for the University of Nebraska. When you think of all of these jobs, though, and when you think about the coaching changes and the coaching firing, it comes down really to one thing. Does the way you want to run a program work, and will you win? Sometimes people think these coaches get an unfair grading system and that it's too much pressure on them. If somebody's paying you $5 million, $6 million, $7 million to win football games, then there's pressure that comes with that money. If you don't want pressure on you, there's a bunch of high schools you can go coach at for $50,000 and you can teach history for 6 hours a day. And it's not a lot of pressure in those environments. But if you want the big bucks and you want the money, then you have to deal with the pressure that comes with that and the expectations that come with it. And if you go anywhere and don't win, we all know that the inevitable is going to happen. And you need to understand what winning is to the program you're taking over. No matter how unrealistic it is, the Nebraska Cornhuskers want to compete for national titles like the good old days, and you better keep that in mind when you take that job, who's ever next.
Some great perspective. All I'm hearing, though, is if you see a Cornhuskers fan, give them a hug. It's going to be a tough year, very tough year. Guys, time for some awards. And Carl, you get us started here with your Run the Rock Team of the Week.
My Run the Rock team of the week, it has to go to the guys at Penn State. Did you believe the way that they dominated the line of scrimmage against Auburn this weekend? Man, Nick Singleton, I got a serious man crush on you. I don't have a daughter, but if I did, I'd wanted to date you. I got a bunch of cousins, though, that are single. Give me a call and we can talk about it. You are the man. When you get a running back like this that's this special, there's nothing this guy can't do. He can go inside. He can go outside. He's completely changed the game for them. 334 yards so far is the most for a Penn State player through 3 games since Larry Johnson, a 2002 Heisman Trophy finalist. This guy is special. He's completely turned his team around. Reminds me of the spark that Maurice Clarett gave Ohio State when he was a true freshman playing in the Big Ten. This is a special guy. Nick Singleton, Penn State O-line, you are my Run the Rock award winner for the week.
Very impressive game by Penn State. Mike Yursich called an incredible game. Sean Clifford managed the offense perfectly. They dialed up everything that you could ask for. Penn State's offensive line, we've been a little bit down on this year. We mentioned earlier this season that that Singleton could maybe help the offensive line maybe look a little bit better than they are, but they've improved. They've done a great job this season running the rock, and I think Penn State's got a chance to do some damage now in the Big Ten, and very impressive performance on Saturday in a really tough environment versus a pretty good front seven, in my opinion.
You hear that, Nick Singleton? Carl Reed needs your digits to send out to some family members. All that from one performance. It's week 3. We'll see how things go for the rest of the season. Certainly, hopefully that it goes in the same trajectory that it did this past weekend. He came alive. Blake, your big ugly of the week is?
Syracuse defensive tackle Caleb Ochukwu got the fat guy touchdown this week against Purdue. Gift wrapped right in his hands, right in a perfect spot for him to catch it and run for the easy touchdown. And, you know, when you're a big guy like Caleb, you don't want to run far. So this worked out perfectly for him. Ball was thrown right in his big mitts, and he had a little 10-yard scamper to the end zone. So hats off to him. Great performance by Syracuse in a big win. That was a really exciting game early in the day when there weren't a lot of good games to watch.
Got to get that oxygen on the sideline after a run like that. I think Mike Golick Jr. calls it a thick 6, which I absolutely love. Big weekend for them. Guys, thanks so much for the great conversation, and thanks for joining us on The Block. You can catch us Monday through Thursday at 1 p.m. on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow.